The gap between staying broke forever and building real wealth is smaller than most people realize, and it comes down to about $20,000. That's the threshold almost nobody crosses, and their salary has nothing to do with it. Nobody in the financial industry wants to tell you this truth because it sounds too simple. They need you to believe wealth is complicated, but it isn't. Wealth is arithmetic, and the arithmetic shows that everything starts working differently once you cross a certain threshold. What follows is exactly why this happens, what changes when you get there, and why most people sabotage themselves right before the breakthrough. If you're working a modest job, bringing home an ordinary paycheck, and wondering whether financial independence is even possible for someone like you, then sit down and pay attention. Difficult beginnings are something I understand. Starting with almost nothing is familiar territory for me. Earning a modest salary, watching every dollar, feeling like the mountain is too high to climb. Going through a divorce that takes almost everything. Burying a child and paying medical bills out of pocket because insurance doesn't exist in your world. Walking the streets crying, then waking up the next morning to go back to work because no other option exists. The great philosophers of realism are also the great philosophers of what I call soldiering through. And if you soldier through, you can survive almost anything. Sympathy isn't why I'm telling you about hardship. I'm telling you because something critical needs to be understood before we go any further. If your situation feels too difficult, if your starting point seems too low, if you believe the deck is stacked against you in ways that make wealth impossible, then reconsider that belief. Whether building wealth from nothing is possible isn't the real question. The real question is whether you're willing to do what's required. Here's what most people get wrong about money. The early stages of wealth building are brutally and painfully slow. You save a few $100s, and it just sits there. Then you add more, and the pile grows at a pace that feels almost insulting. Other people are buying things, taking vacations, living what looks like a better life, and you start wondering if you're the fool. Most people quit right here, right at the moment when everything feels pointless. What escapes them is that they're standing at the base of an exponential curve. The early part of that curve appears nearly flat, like nothing is happening, but the curve isn't actually flat. It's waiting, and quitting now means never seeing what happens next. Some simple arithmetic is worth understanding because the elementary mathematics of compound interest is one of the most important models on earth. Suppose you manage to save $400 a month, which adds up to $4,800 a year. At the end of year one, you have $4,800 plus whatever small return you earned. So you end up with maybe $5,000. You sacrificed for an entire year, brown-bagged your lunches, skipped vacations, drove the old car, and all you have to show for it is $5,000. This is where the weak-minded give up. They look at that $5,000 and calculate how long it would take to become wealthy at this pace, doing the math wrong because they think linearly. If saving $5,000 takes a whole year, they tell themselves, then saving $100,000 will take 20 years, and by then they'll be old. So what's the point? The thinking is exactly backwards, and this error keeps more people poor than any economic system, any unfair boss, any rigged game you want to blame. The first $20,000 is where everything changes. Not because $20,000 is a magic number, but because of what happens psychologically and mathematically once you cross that threshold. Psychologically, you stop feeling like a person who can't save money. Your identity shifts, and you have proof that you can do this. A cushion exists that lets you sleep at night. Options you didn't have before suddenly appear, and you're no longer one car repair away from disaster. Mathematically, your money starts working in ways you can actually see. Even a modest return on $20,000 generates $1,000 to $2,000 a year without you lifting a finger. That's not life-changing yet, but it's visible and real, and it compounds. Here's the part people dramatically underestimate. The returns on your money start approaching, then matching, then exceeding what you can add through savings alone. With $1,000 saved, a 10% return produces $100, which is almost meaningless. With $20,000 saved, that same 10% return produces $2,000, which is nearly half of what you saved from your salary that year. $50,000 in savings means the return hits $5,000, and now your money contributes as much as you do. $100,000 in savings produces $10,000, and now your money works harder than you can work. This is the great secret of wealth. The first portion requires almost entirely your sacrifice, with you doing all the work while your money does almost nothing. But a crossover point arrives where your money starts carrying more and more of the load, and you can ease off the gas a little bit. Most people never reach this crossover point because they quit during the hard part, quitting when they're doing all the work and their money is doing nothing. They look at the math and can't imagine how this slow crawl could ever turn into real wealth. But the math doesn't lie. The curve is exponential, with the early part flat and the later part steep, and nobody gets to the steep part without surviving the flat part first. Mental errors trap people in poverty, and understanding them is worth your time. The first error is impatience. Great investing demands a lot of delayed gratification, and if you didn't get the deferred gratification gene, you've got to work very hard to overcome that. Most people cannot sit still and cannot wait. They see neighbors buying boats and taking cruises, and something inside them breaks. Missing out becomes an obsession, so they spend their seed corn to feel better today and guarantee their poverty tomorrow. The arithmetic of patience is brutal in the early years. You're saving $400 a month and watching your account grow by tiny increments while the world around you screams to spend. Advertisements hit you thousands of times a day. Your coworkers talk about their new cars. Social media shows you carefully curated images of people living lives you can't afford. And something in the human brain interprets all of this as evidence that you're falling behind, that your sacrifice is pointless, that you should just enjoy life now, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed anyway. This is where most wealth-building attempts die. Not from bad investments, not from market crashes, but from the simple inability to wait. The person who could have been wealthy at 60 is broke at 60 because they couldn't tolerate being less flashy than their neighbors at 35. Mozart became the most famous composer in the world, creating music that will be played for centuries. And yet Mozart was utterly miserable most of his life for one simple reason. He always overspent his income, no matter how much he earned, and he died broke. Here was a man with gifts that appear once in a century, earning substantial sums for his era, and none of it mattered because the money left faster than it came in. If Mozart couldn't get away with this behavior, what makes you think you can? The uncomfortable truth is that your income level has almost nothing to do with whether you build wealth. High earners go broke all the time because they simply scale up their spending to match or exceed whatever they bring in. A person earning $50,000 who saves $5,000 a year will end up wealthier than a person earning $200,000 who saves nothing. The arithmetic doesn't care about your job title or your tax bracket. The second error is envy. The world isn't driven by greed, but by envy. And I've watched envy destroy more financial plans than any market crash. You have a good plan, you're saving money, you're making progress, and then you see someone else getting richer faster than you. Suddenly your plan feels inadequate, so you start taking stupid risks to catch up. Spending money to prove you're not falling behind, destroying yourself trying to match people who might be destroying themselves too. What makes envy particularly dangerous is that it attacks people who are actually succeeding. You don't need envy to destroy someone with no plan and no discipline. Those people will fail anyway. Envy reserves its worst damage for the person who was doing everything right until they looked sideways and saw someone else pulling ahead. The neighbor with the new car might be financing it at 18% interest. The colleague who just bought the bigger house might be one layoff away from foreclosure. The friend who seems to be getting rich quick on speculative investments might be about to lose everything. You don't know their real situation, but envy doesn't care about reality. Envy only sees the surface, and the surface is designed to deceive. Someone will always be getting richer faster than you, and this is not a tragedy. The tragedy is letting that fact derail your own progress. Envy stands out as a really stupid sin because it's the only one where you could never possibly have any fun. With gluttony, at least you get to enjoy the meal. With lust, at least some pleasure is involved. But envy just leaves you sitting there, feeling miserable about someone else's success, getting nothing out of it except misery, making it a complete waste of emotional energy. Think about what envy actually accomplishes. It makes you feel terrible. It pushes you toward bad decisions. It poisons your satisfaction with your own progress. And it gives you absolutely nothing in return. Every other vice at least offers some temporary pleasure, some momentary satisfaction. Envy offers only pain, and you inflict it entirely on yourself. Envy is something I conquered in my own life many years ago. Nobody gets my envy, and I don't give a damn what somebody else has. This mental shift alone is worth millions of dollars over a lifetime. When you stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your own plan, your own goals, your own timeline, the psychological pressure evaporates. You can watch someone else get rich without feeling diminished. You can stick to your strategy without second-guessing every decision. You can enjoy your own progress without constantly comparing it to someone else's highlight reel. The third error is self-pity. Envy, resentment, revenge, and self-pity are disastrous modes of thought, and self-pity gets pretty close to paranoia, which is one of the very hardest things to reverse. Drifting into self-pity is something you do not want. Every time you find yourself drifting into self-pity, regardless of the cause, stop it immediately. Your child could be dying, and self-pity still won't improve the situation. It will only paralyze you and make you weaker, and weakness is not what builds wealth. Inversion is one of the most powerful mental tools for getting rich, and almost nobody uses it. Most people think about success by asking what they need to do to get rich. But that's the wrong question. The right question is what would guarantee staying poor forever, and how can those things be avoided? An old saying captures this perfectly. All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. What guarantees financial failure? The answers become obvious once you bother to list them. Spending more than you earn is guaranteed failure. Not saving anything is guaranteed failure. Taking on high-interest debt, especially credit card debt, is guaranteed failure because once you get into debt, getting out is hell. You can't get ahead paying 18% interest. Being unreliable, showing up late, breaking promises, and not finishing what you start guarantees that nobody will want to work with you, promote you, or invest in you. Using drugs or alcohol excessively impairs your judgment and erodes your earning power. Feeling sorry for yourself makes you passive when you need to be active. Acting on envy makes you take stupid risks and spend money you should be saving. Once you've identified all the behaviors that guarantee failure, the strategy becomes simple. Don't do those things. Remarkable long-term advantage comes from trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. People are trying to be smart. All I'm trying to do is not be idiotic, but that's harder than most people think. A principle that seems obvious but gets almost universally ignored deserves attention here. Spend less than you make, always be saving something, put it into a tax-deferred account, and over time it will begin to amount to something. This is such a no-brainer. The simplicity is striking. Spend less than you earn, invest shrewdly, avoid toxic people and toxic activities, keep learning all your life, and do a lot of deferred gratification because you prefer life that way. Doing all those things makes success almost certain, and not doing them means you're going to need a lot of luck. My grandfather served as a federal judge back when no pensions existed for judges' widows, which meant if he didn't save from his income, his wife would have ended up in poverty after his death. Being the kind of man he was, he underspent his income all his life and left my grandmother in comfortable circumstances. An old verse comes to mind often, "Mine were of trouble, and mine were steady, so I was ready when trouble came." That's what having savings does for you. It makes you ready when trouble comes, and trouble always comes. Something about leverage needs to be understood, because this is where smart people destroy themselves. 3 ways exist for smart men to go broke: liquor, ladies, and leverage, with leverage being the worst. The pattern repeats over and over. A person accumulates some wealth and then gets impatient, wanting to speed up the process. Borrowing money to invest follows, along with buying stocks on margin and taking on debt to purchase real estate they can't really afford. For a while, it works beautifully because leverage magnifies gains, and they feel like geniuses. Then something goes wrong. The market drops, A tenant doesn't pay, an unexpected expense hits, and suddenly leverage is magnifying losses. A margin call arrives, forcing them to sell at the worst possible time, and everything is lost. A slight chance of catastrophe always exists when you own securities pledged to others. Warren and I have always been chicken about buying stocks on margin, and that's not cowardice, but arithmetic. The expected value of using leverage might be positive, but the risk of ruin makes it not worth it. Getting rich only needs to happen once, not 4 times. The beauty of building wealth the slow way is that you only have to do it once. Getting there without leverage and without catastrophic risks means nobody can take it away from you, but trying to get there faster by borrowing might force you to start over multiple times. Each restart comes with less time for compounding to work because you're older. Earning power deserves discussion because saving money is only half the equation. The safest way to get what you want is to try to deserve what you want, which is the golden rule applied to economics. You want to deliver to the world what you would buy if you were on the other end. Earning more requires becoming more valuable, developing skills that people will pay for, becoming reliable, knowledgeable, and capable. And learning must continue forever. People constantly rise in life who are not the smartest and sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines who go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up. Over a long run, that makes all the difference. Wisdom acquisition is a moral duty, not something you do just to advance in life. Lifetime learning is mandatory. Without it, you're not going to do very well, and you will not get very far in life based on what you already know. No wise people exist over a broad subject matter area who didn't read all the time. None. Zero. The amount Warren Buffett reads would amaze you, and the amount I read would too. My children laugh at me because they think I'm a book, with a couple of legs sticking out. If you're sitting there with a small salary thinking you're stuck, understand this. Your salary today is not your salary forever, but it will be your salary forever if you stop learning. Continuing to learn and becoming more valuable increases your earning power. And as your earning power increases, your ability to save increases. And as your saving increases, compounding takes over. Circle of competence is a concept that matters for both your career and your investments. Figuring out your own aptitudes is essential. Playing games where other people have the aptitudes and you don't means you're going to lose, which is as close to certain as any prediction you can make. Finding where you've got an edge is necessary, and playing within your own circle of competence is mandatory. Thinking about things where I have an advantage over other people is how I operate. Playing in a game where other people are wise and I'm stupid is not my approach. Looking for a place where I'm wise and they're stupid is what I do. Knowing the edge of your own competency is essential, and knowing when I can't handle something is something I'm very good at. Most people have a very small circle of competence and pretend it's much larger than it is, which leads them to make investments they don't understand, take jobs they're not suited for, and start businesses in industries they know nothing about. Then failure surprises them. Stay inside your circle, master what's inside it, and slowly over time expand it through learning. What happens after crossing the $20,000 threshold, then the $50,000 threshold, then the $100,000 threshold is worth examining. Getting to the first $100,000 from a standing start with no seed money is the most difficult part of building wealth. Making the first million is the next big hurdle, and doing that requires consistently underspending your income. Getting wealthy resembles rolling a snowball, and it helps to start on top of a long hill. Starting early and trying to roll that snowball for a very long time is the approach, and living a long life helps. Building wealth came through a combination of legal work, real estate development, and eventually investment partnerships for me. A partnership with a friend on real estate projects began with each of us putting in $100,000 on our first deal, and those apartments sold at a profit that returned $500,000 to each of us. 5 real estate projects total came and went, and then I stopped. When it was over, $1.4 million had accumulated from those deals alone, and within a few years of doing both law and real estate side by side, the total reached $3 to $4 million. The point isn't that you should do exactly what I did. The point is that once you have capital, opportunities appear that are invisible to people without capital. Partnering on deals becomes possible, investing in businesses opens up, and taking calculated risks that someone living paycheck to paycheck cannot even consider becomes an option. Capital attracts opportunity, and opportunity generates more capital. The rich get richer, not because the system is unfair, but because having money allows you to make more money. Your job is to get enough capital to enter that virtuous cycle, and $20,000 is where that cycle begins to become visible. Patience is where most people fail, even after they start building capital. The big money is not in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting. Most people cannot wait because they want to trade, want to feel active, want to believe they're doing something. Buying and selling constantly follows, along with paying fees and commissions, paying taxes on short-term gains, and interrupting the compounding process that would have made them wealthy if they had just sat still. Sitting on your ass means paying less to brokers, listening to less nonsense, and if it works, the tax system gives you an extra 1, 2, or 3 percentage points per annum. That extra few percentage points from doing nothing might not sound like much, but over decades, it's the difference between comfortable wealth and life-changing wealth. The first rule of compounding is never interrupt it unnecessarily. Every time you sell an investment that's working, you pay taxes. Every time you pay taxes, you have less capital compounding. Every time you have less capital compounding, you end up with less money at the end. Simple arithmetic governs all of this, but people keep getting it wrong because they can't sit still. Something might be going through your head right now, and it needs to be addressed. You might be thinking that this all sounds reasonable, but the world has changed, and it's harder now than it used to be. You're right. It is harder now. More competition exists, and the opportunities from decades ago don't exist in the same form today. Getting rich will be harder for the present generation because there's more competition, and you have to get better and better, or you will lose. But harder is not impossible. Harder just means trying harder and working harder. The fundamental arithmetic of wealth hasn't changed, and compounding still works the same way. The psychology of success hasn't changed either, and patience, discipline, and continuous learning still work. The people who will build wealth in this generation will be the ones who accept that it's harder and do the work anyway. They won't sit around complaining that previous generations had it easier, but will focus on what they can control and execute. The relationship between Warren Buffett and me illustrates something important about success. Figuring out early in my career which people I admired was the first step. Maneuvering cleverly without criticizing anybody so that I was working entirely under people I admired followed. Your outcome in life will be way more satisfactory and way better if you work under people you really admire. When I met Warren Buffett in 1959, recognizing immediately that here was someone exceptional came naturally. We shared ideas about business, finance, history, and investing, and we both held this fundamental belief that the world works better when you make your relationships win-win. Learning early that the way to get a good partner is to be a good partner was something we both did. These are very old-fashioned ideas, and they worked fabulously well. Warren persuaded me to leave the law practice at the earliest point I could afford to do so, which was a significant influence on my life. Becoming a full-time investor was already on my mind, but he pushed me to it. Working hard for many years to build up a career, as I had done in the law, and then deliberately destroying that career to start something new, isn't easy. That would have been much harder without Warren's influence. The lesson here is simple. Find people who are going where you want to go, who operate with principles you respect, and figure out how to be useful to them. Your network is not about collecting business cards, but about building genuine relationships with people you admire, where both sides benefit. That's how real opportunities emerge. What happens after building wealth needs to be understood, because without understanding it, the point of the whole exercise might not be clear. Like Warren, a considerable passion to get rich existed in me, not because fancy cars appealed to me, but because independence did. I desperately wanted it because having to send invoices to other people seemed undignified. Where that notion came from is unclear, but it was there. The point of getting rich is not accumulating possessions. The point is freedom, not needing other people, being able to make your own choices without asking anyone's permission. Being broke means taking whatever job you can get, putting up with whatever conditions exist, unable to say no because you need the paycheck. You're not living your life but whatever life your financial situation allows. Having capital changes everything. Saying no becomes possible. Waiting for the right opportunity instead of grabbing the first one becomes an option. Taking calculated risks, weathering bad periods without panic, and thinking long term because you're not desperate short term all become available. This is what changes after $20,000. Not just the math, but your whole relationship with life starts to shift. Being a victim of circumstances ends, and being the author of your own story begins. What not to do with growing wealth matters because many people go wrong right at the moment of success. Don't start living large the moment you have some money because the people who build lasting wealth keep their expenses relatively flat even as their income grows. Every dollar you don't spend is a dollar that compounds. And every dollar you spend on luxury is a dollar gone forever. Don't listen to people selling complex financial products because the financial industry makes money from complexity while you make money from simplicity. The more complex a product is, the more likely it benefits the seller rather than you. Don't check your investments every day because the more often you look, the more likely you are to do something stupid. Markets fluctuate, and that's what they do. If you can't handle seeing your portfolio drop 20 or 30% without panicking, you shouldn't be investing in stocks at all. Don't try to time the market because the wise ones bet heavily when the world offers them that opportunity. Betting big when they have the odds and not betting the rest of the time. But that's different from trying to guess when markets will go up or down, which nobody can do consistently. Just find good investments and hold them. Don't diversify excessively, which might sound like strange advice, but if you've done your homework and found something you understand deeply, you should invest meaningfully in it. Warren once said he could improve your financial welfare by giving you a ticket with only 20 slots in it, representing all the investments you get to make in a lifetime. And once you'd punched through the card, you couldn't make any more investments. Under those rules, you'd think carefully about each decision, being forced to load up on what you'd really thought about, and you'd do much better. If you want to carry one message from everything I've told you, here it is. If it's trite, it's right. And all those old virtues work. Spend less than you earn. Work hard. Keep learning. Be reliable. Be patient. Avoid debt. Avoid envy. Avoid self-pity. Find good partners. Stay within your circle of competence. Don't do stupid things. None of this is complicated, but all of it is difficult. The difficulty lies not in understanding what to do, but in actually doing it day after day, year after year, when the progress is slow and the temptations are constant. The first $20,000 will be hard, and you'll wonder if it's worth it. Temptation to spend it on something that makes you feel better today will arise, and you'll watch other people who seem to be living larger lives on credit. Ignore all of that and stay the course. Because once you cross $20,000, something starts to shift. Proof that you can do this exists. Your money starts earning enough that you can see it, and the psychology of scarcity begins to lift. Then the push toward $50,000 comes, and your money contributes meaningfully to its own growth. Then the push toward $100,000 comes, and you can ease off the gas a little because your money works almost as hard as you do. And beyond that, the curve steepens dramatically. Your money works harder than you ever could, and financial freedom waits. But none of it happens without surviving the flat part of the curve. None of it happens without crossing that first $20,000 threshold. Understanding both the power of compound interest and the difficulty of getting it is the heart and soul of understanding a lot of things. Now you understand, and the question is what you're going to do about it. If anything you really want to accomplish exists, don't wait. Time is the essential ingredient in compounding, and every year you delay is a year of growth you'll never get back. Start now. Save something. Avoid stupidity. Keep learning. Be patient. The math will do the rest.